Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, Mr. Moohead. Joining me is Derek Frisbee from DF Sports. That's him. And of
Hello.
course, the disgruntled Browns fan, Brian, who's just disgruntled. What can I tell you? Um, Today's show, we got to get a little bit of this and a little bit of that in. And with the whole Odell Beckham thing just boiling over, I wanted to do this show in a fairly straightforward way to start out with the whole OBJ thing, all right? And then to talk about the Cleveland Browns fan base, and then to talk about Kevin Stefanski, and then to talk about the game coming up this Sunday. So there you go. So the way I'm going to start this is Odell Beckham Jr. Uh, this everybody's making a real big deal of this. This is all over the news. It's everything you see, everything you hear, and the issue is that the Browns were never able to use him in such a way that he was able to be the dynamic player that he had been in the past. And a large percentage, when I say a large percentage, I'm saying like 50% of the Cleveland Browns fan base has gone against Baker Mayfield and is siding with Odell Beckham Jr. And I don't think there's anything to side with on this. I think that Baker Mayfield tried to involve Odell Beckham and his group of people during the offseason. What has really affected me the most, as far as Odell Beckham Jr., is that this is not something that just came up. He's been trying to get out of Cleveland while he was traveling with Baker Mayfield, and he was doing social things and some light football things while he was healing from his surgery. And he was asking to be traded long before the season began. So to put this into a sharper focus, the season hadn't even begun and he wanted to be traded. So this has nothing to do with the Browns being worse this year than they were last year. He didn't know that at the time. Nobody knew that at the time. He wanted out. And he did not start the season that way because he wanted to wait until the most miserable moment that he possibly could to make his move. So what he did is he waited for the loss to the Steelers and for things to really start getting more difficult for the Browns. And during a pressure period of time, he got his functionally illiterate father to write something on Instagram and incorporating a video so daddy could detonate the fuse for son, because son didn't have the courage to do it himself publicly. So what basically transpired, without even talking about what happened this year on the football field or the other years that Odell was playing in Cleveland, is that as the season progressed, that wasn't the reason he wanted to go. Let's be honest about this. This has everything to do with Cleveland, Ohio, and has a whole lot less to do with winning. Because, and again, let's be honest, this whole thing about, we're really going to get crushed, we won without Odell Beckham last year, folks. I mean, it's already on the record and already proven. Would it be nice to have a talented receiver? Sure, it would. But I would liken it this way. They say, well, there's no chemistry. The reason because Baker Mayfield had no chemistry with him. If you have a band, all right, and I'll do this in musical terms for you. Let's just say that The Who, back when they were really popular, I'll talk to the guys who were my age group, all right? And you got Roger Daltrey, who's a lead singer. You got John Entwistle, who's the bass player. You've got Pete Townsend, who's the songwriter and the guitar player with his windmill fashion. And you have Keith Moon on the drums. How great a band would they have been if Keith Moon just decided that he wanted to play a solo in the middle of a song? How good would it be? Would they be a Hall of Fame
Instead
band?
of passing out in the middle of his fucking set, that happened down here in Phoenix, and they had to get somebody out of the fucking audience to finish the show.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it and put it that way, I think maybe you can understand this is a rigid offensive scheme. And we'll talk about Stefanski in a minute. But this is very much X's and O's and is very much about precision and being in the place you're supposed to be. All right? So what you have is Baker Mayfield learning that system, and it's being drilled into his head that, we can't be doing things the way you were doing it with Freddie, and just making it up as you went along. And this is not Hugh Jackson either. This is a rigid system, and if you follow this system, we will teach you how to be efficient. That's what it was all about. But that's what Odell Beckham Jr. liked least. The city of Cleveland is not exciting, but playing in a very paint by numbers orientation as far as the offensive scheme was concerned diluted his personal cachet. Didn't allow him to shine in a way that he's accustomed to shining, and worse yet, it happened in Cleveland, which is not the place that you want to be out of the limelight. So what you do is you put yourself back in the limelight by getting daddy to detonate the fuse. And then you get everybody screaming and yelling. Again, he's 29 years old. He's got 2 torn shoulders. He's coming off an ACL. When we got him, he was coming off ankle surgery. Okay? I mean, this is cumulative, folks, and it's not to badmouth Odell Beckham Jr. It's just a fact. These injuries linger. And when you don't get surgery, he did that for his ankle, but he has not for his shoulders. When you don't do that, and he did for his ACL, and, I think the whole idea of him working as hard as he did and putting up all those videos of him running on treadmills and all that was to try to sell himself to somebody else eventually, to prove that he was still capable of doing what he was once doing when he was much younger as a New York Giant. But again, it wasn't about winning there either. They did in the beginning, but when things got bad, he turned up the heat on them the same way he turned up the heat on Cleveland. And unfortunately, he didn't have the respect to tell Baker Mayfield or his teammates what he was doing. It just shows up on Instagram. And
one thing to remember here is Odell Beckham Jr. is very much friends with a lot of NBA players. And that was one thing you saw from the Twitter situation and players coming out. I'm sure LeBron or Dame Lillard or somebody said, hey, in the NBA, you know how we get out? We cause trouble, we go on Twitter, and we get out that way. So this was an orchestrated attack, I guess you could say, for him to do everything he could last minute to be traded. But the one thing that he didn't factor in, it's not like the NBA. No team is taking that money for a guy who's been that hurt and that non-productive. So the whole trade thing fell through because of him. It wasn't that the Browns could or didn't want to. Of course they did. They would have rather got something than nothing, but it's not the same way. So he listened to his friends thinking, hey, this is how they do it there. It doesn't work the same way. And now he's in this boat and he could end up on the Detroit Lions. I mean, that's...
Well, I mean, he could, but I mean, realistically, there are going to be a lot of teams who are going to, and he will go where he can get the most attention. So whatever team's being talked about the most, you can bet that's where he's going to go. And, again, it's no different than the NBA. You're absolutely right. Because where players, their list is always the same. It's the same cities. It's the same teams they want to go to. Nobody says, I want to spread my wings in Sacramento. Nobody does that. It's the Lakers. I want to be with the Nets. I want, and it just depends who the hot teams are at that time. And that's where they want to go. That's what Odell Beckham will do. And even if he does not ever come back to being the caliber of player that he used to be, he he'll have attention. He'll go out with a bang because he'll have a major market that he can go ahead and torch, because that's basically what he's done to the city of Cleveland. He's just thrown the team under the bus when it was having its most difficult time of the year.
And he's got the media on his side. When he was in New York and causing all this trouble, they were pretty much, if I remember correctly, they were for the most part against him and what he was doing. This time, because it's the Browns and because it's Baker and everybody's so against us, our side of things, he's got the complete full force of the media supporting him wherever he goes.
Nobody can explain to me, and it's funny because we're living in a time where there is all kinds of irrational, what people call opinions, and I really don't even consider them opinions. I just consider them rantings or baiting or whatever. I'll give you a good example. The presidential election of 2020, the state of Georgia, it was the contention of right-wing people that was fixed, that it was rigged because so many people voted Democratic, and the amount of people who showed up on the voter rolls, I mean, and the sheer turnout was so much more historically large than it had been in the past that it had to be rigged. Well, the same thing happened in Virginia, except the Republican won the gubernatorial race there. And the exact same thing happened. The incumbent, who a lot of people acknowledged did not run a great campaign, had more votes in that election than he ever did before. But the Republicans, more than one person voted if you were to, again, compare it to previous, the people voted more than once. Now, that's not what happened. I'm not going to say that's what happened. But what I will say is, if you believe it happened in one place, you must believe it happened in the other. I choose to believe that it didn't happen in either and that people were motivated and got out and voted. But personally, I think how they get motivated is by the same hand. I think whether it was whoever did it in 2020 just did it, and you're going to see the pendulum swing the other way, and it keeps us fighting amongst each other. That's what it feels like with OBJ. It feels like, all right, if this is a referendum on how good a player OBJ is, then why the hating on Baker Mayfield? Why is that immediately part of the conversation? It doesn't make any sense to me. So,
Well,
that's
did they
really
hate on
all I've
Eli?
got to say. Go ahead.
I said, and another thing there is, did they hate on Eli? No, it's because it's Baker that they're hating on Baker. It's the same
Oh
thing
no,
we've
they
talked
they
about for
hate it.
years.
No, they had a lot to say about fucking Eli Manning too.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
you know.
it's the thing that's difficult is when you're a name athlete, and it's so much more prolific in the NBA, where guys are disgruntled and they want to leave a place, and Kevin Durant just says, "I've had it being in Oklahoma City, and I want to go to the Warriors," and he goes to the Warriors and they become unbeatable, and then the Warriors are not going to be good anymore. So I better get out here and go to New York because it's bigger yet. And the fact of the matter is they're good basketball players. I look at it as quality of people. I'm a fan, all right? And in the end, we will all want to win. I would think that all Cleveland fans want to win. We're very happy with last year. We're not so happy with this year. But I mean, we all want to win. The way I look at it is, if I'm going to win, I want to win with people I can relate to, not with selfish pricks who have their father detonate fuses for them and then put up functionally illiterate tweets or Instagrams about it. Allowed is spelled A-L-L-O-W-E-D, you stupid ignoramus. A-L-O-U-D.
Oh, then maybe
I mean,
Oh,
please.
then he's talking about being outspoken, saying it aloud.
No. No.
Or
The
he just
context
used
was
the wrong.
ALLOWED. He's functionally illiterate. But to have somebody carrying water for you like that means that you're not courageous enough to do it yourself. And I don't want a person of low character like that on my football team, because in the end, they will bury you, just like Kyrie Irving did. And he's done ever since. He'll keep doing it everywhere he goes. Remember, Cleveland was a black hole, man. LeBron wouldn't turn the keys over to me. Then he went to Boston, like Boston was going to be any different. And he gets to Boston, and it's like he's pouting by the end of the year. Now, it's like he's finally in New York where he said he wanted to be, and he's still not playing. And he won't play. And he's a disgrace. He's a human piece of waste. He's talented, just like Odell Beckham, but he's a human piece of waste. He makes things worse. He makes things worse, and the Browns won without him. The Browns did better without him, consistently. I want the team to be without him. And I don't want anything bad to happen to him. Let the buyer beware. That's all. Let the buyer beware. Now,
And that's my biggest thing here is if he wanted out, he could have picked up the phone and called Kevin Stefanski. He could have picked up the phone and called Baker and said, listen, it's just not working, but he didn't have the balls to do that. That's the problem here. That's why every team, any team who's considering signing him right now, like you said, buyer beware, expect the same thing that happened in New York, the same thing that happened in Cleveland, the same thing will happen to you. It's the same thing over and over with him. So it's
somebody
just to be
has to take a
expected.
chance. Somebody will take a chance on him, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And Rick May's talking about Ben Simmons with the 76ers. And you want to know what's amazing? Yeah, and he's not in a psychological good place to play, and he's stringing them along and stringing them along. You know what the truth about Ben Simmons is? They didn't win with him. He never learned how to shoot the ball. He never learned how to shoot a free throw. He took the big money up front, and he never improved as a player, and his mood soured, and the team got sick of him. That's Ben Simmons. Nobody wants Ben Simmons because he's a 6'10" point guard who thinks that he can only play back down basketball, and he is eclipsed in all regards by people like Giannis who can shoot threes. And, this guy is just like another reluctant dragon. He'll never win anywhere. And Odell Beckham, the back end of his New York career, maybe he got off a burning ship and he found himself in a place where the team got better in Cleveland, but he didn't want to be in Cleveland. That's all. He wanted out. Even when they were winning, he wanted out because it wasn't enough for him personally. So that's the end of my segment on OBJ. Next, what should we talk about next? The Cleveland Browns fans. Fans are fickle. And I understand a lot of people who jumped on the Browns bandwagon from last year are not real Browns fans. And a lot of those people are the ones who are kvetching and bitching about Baker Mayfield. But the thing that's interesting about the fan base here is you can, the fans have the freedom to express whatever point of view they want to have. But the funny part of the story is the fuse that was detonated by a video who was a Browns fan who just decided he was going to show 11 minutes worth of footage without context of how OBJ was open and Baker Mayfield wasn't going to throw to him. And the hit job was on Baker. The whole thing wasn't, and he came out himself and said, the point wasn't to get Baker Mayfield in trouble. It was to point out his belief that OBJ was severely underutilized and wasn't being thrown to when he was open. But again, if you break off patterns in a very rigid X and O system and take off in an opposite direction and fool your own quarterback, of course, there may be green field in front of you, but he doesn't know where in the hell you're going. And nor can he. He's not in your head. He's running patterns that make himself look open so he can get the ball more. But he's not telling anybody that he's going to do it. He's like the crazy drum solo. It doesn't work. And for Browns, that Browns fan steps over the line and he ends up lighting a bigger fuse than he realized, because we live in times where the people who are the most vociferous will literally, like rats, nibble on whatever cheese there is available.
Hey, I just found an interesting stat if you want to hear it.
Sure.
Per Next Gen Stats, OBJ's ranking of getting open is 126 out of 154, and out of all 5 Browns receivers, he is 5th. So, yeah, getting open. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
But there's a difference between getting open and actually hanging on to the motherfucking football.
Well, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there's so many things at work here. But the funny thing is the division of Browns fans. I consider them real Browns fans, and then I consider them fringe activists. All right. It's like people who really want racial equality versus people who would just rather riot in the streets about that cause. 2 different types of people. The fringe radical fan is the one that will go on and put up videos out of context, and that 11-minute video is so full of shit. I can only tell you that we know the one play that we talked about specifically, where Baker Mayfield in the last game threw to all the way down the field and Odell Beckham tried to one-hand it, because you only put one arm up. And the coach didn't recognize the defense that Pittsburgh was playing. And so that's how that play got double covered and there was nowhere to go with the ball. They tried to blame Baker for that. It wasn't. That was the head coach. And we'll talk about Stefanski in just a minute. But the Browns fans down the middle, there is very little of the centrist group who really want the team to win. The other outside groups just want anarchy. And that's the times we live in. They just want to be able to light people's fuses online and gaslight them. They want attention, just like OBJ wants attention. And this seems to be a dark need for people in our society today. And it's too bad. I don't consider those people fans. I consider them antagonists, agitators. That's what they are. So there are ways of making points. And anybody who listens to this program knows I'm not going to sit here and be like clevelandbrowns.com and just whistle a tune of Dixie while Rome's burning. The team has legitimate problems, big problems. But I'm not going to sit there and just start fingering one person, especially not Haslam's wife. God, I would never finger her. There's no reason to point one person out of the mess. I mean, that's like blaming the Titanic on one guy. You motherfucker! Fucking iceberg. See, I knew it was a Jew. His name was Iceberg. That's what you call an agitator. So I'm really disappointed in some of the Browns fans, and this separation. You had nothing. The people, I'm convinced, who are at the top of the get rid of Baker list are the people who are not really Browns fans. They're a lot like the people who became Cleveland Cavaliers fans when LeBron left Miami and came to Cleveland, or became Lakers fans when he went to LA. And now they'll be crowding into the old folks' home because he's laid up again for another week, this time with an abdominal strain. Poor LeBron. His age is catching up with him. It does everybody. But the fans, they just flock to wherever they're flocking to, and they just raise shit when they're done with you. And they're just done with Cleveland because they love to ride a bandwagon and love to pretend that they're winners. They're the kinds of people who hang on the coattails of famous people, and when those people are no longer famous, they stop hanging on. And I hate those people. I despise them. I don't think they're real fans, and I wish they just shut the fuck up. Because your opinion is meaningless if you're telling me that Baker Mayfield is a problem in Cleveland. You haven't been a fan, man. You haven't seen the quarterbacks we've had before him. I'm not going to tell you that he is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He is not. Right? I'm not going to tell you that Bernie Kosar was either. I'm not going to tell you that he's a guy who's going to win multiple Super Bowls. I don't believe that that's going to be the case. I'm not going to pump him up for no good reason. At the same time, he could win a Super Bowl. You get in that game, he gets hot. Yes, he absolutely could win that game. So you got to get there first. You got to get into the playoffs first. And I keep saying that over and over.
And everybody loves Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, but he's got one. So, I mean, that just goes to show you just because you're a great quarterback doesn't mean you're going to be a multiple-time Super Bowl champ.
Well, this whole Aaron Rodgers thing now is taking a turn too.
And the whole thing about these assholes loving Deshaun Watson. What the fuck has Deshaun Watson won? Do they understand that at one time he had DeAndre Hopkins, Andre Johnson, or no, it was Andre Johnson, Jadeveon Clowney, and fucking JJ Watt on his team? And how many fucking Super Bowls did they come up with? 0. I don't think they went that fucking far in the playoffs in the years that they did actually make the playoffs. So fuck Deshaun Watson and all of his fucking, groping of women.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is it's
Oh,
what
but
you
if we
do on
had
the field.
Deshaun Watson, we could go to the Super Bowl.
No,
Bullshit.
I mean, well, the thing is that Baker Mayfield proved that he can get you to the game before the AFC Championship game, and it was unfortunate the way that he had to do it last year with a team that defensively had no clue on what it was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and look who he was throwing to. That's the biggest thing I always keep coming back to, Moo, is it's not, in my opinion, it's not that Baker can't work with star receivers because he has before going back to college. And I know it's college, but still, it's not the receiver, it's the personality. It's when in the back of his head, he's thinking, if I don't get this guy the ball, he's going to be throwing a fit on the sideline. That, in my opinion, that's what it is. So, I mean, you look at who Baker was throwing to, and you look at who he's going to be throwing to on Sunday, it's back to the good old days. Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, these guys who people overlook. That's what it is. When Baker can just not focus on one thing or one person and just spread the ball around, that's when he's at his best. And that's why I think Sunday he's going to have a great game. I mean, statistically, it shows it. And you can't really expect otherwise until he proves that.
Well, that's all I wanted to say about so-called Browns fans. They're not going to be welcome on this program spouting that kind of ignorance and hate. That's not what we do here. We try to, and there are going to be games where a quarterback has a very good game and a very bad game. And, again, it's, and people will fall in love with a backup quarterback. It's happened in New York with the Jets now. It can happen. Now, there are lots of Kelly Holcombs who are Johnny-come-latelys who don't last very long. And again, I remember what the guy did for me last year, and he did it without Odell Beckham. And I thought the offense was just fine last year. There are other problems, and that's what leads me to the third part of the equation, which is Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski is as I've been calling him, the ruminator, and he is a person who's very to the nines. He's just a neat, immaculate, everything has its own neat little compartment kind of guy. And he is meticulous in that regard. The problem with having everything in order in front of you, like on a desk that's in front of me, you should see my desk. It's a snake pit of cables. If you looked at me at my desk, you would say, oh my God, this guy's completely scattered. But the fact is, I come on here 4 times a week and I do, 12 minutes at halftime, but I do hours at a time without any notes, without any preparation, because I have it up here. The problem with Stefanski is he's really good at scripting some plays, but in the extemporaneous part of the game, which is once the flow of the game is determined and teams make adjustments, he's not so good. And what he has done this week is the worst thing he could have possibly done. When you make a statement like, and I'm not going to get this quote exactly right, but, his comment about how the Browns have to win, our lives depend on it, was the way he phrased it. Do you have the rest of the quote? I mean, to me, it was, and I had it here, and I don't
look
know.
for it.
Yeah, but off the top of my head, it was, we are desperate. That was the way he phrased it. So basically, it sounded like a 5-alarm fire drill. Every man for himself. My God, we're desperate. Our lives depend on it. We have to win this week. Now, what do you say when you lose? Good night, everybody. It's over. 4-5, it's over. I've seen teams win 6 games in a row. It's not over. This whole overly dramatic bullshit that this head coach is doing, if he thinks that motivates people, he's got another thing coming. You got John Johnson III, who's saying, I take OBJ back with open arms, even though he threw our quarterback under the tractor.
I have the quote.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kevin Stefanski said, I see the challenge in trying to get a win. He said, we're 4-4. We have to get a win. Our lives our lives depend on it. It's the way we look at it. We're desperate, and that's where our focus is.
Yeah, desperate. What do desperate people do? They rob stores. Desperate people do things that are irrational. Everything that this guy talks about is like, we've got to be focused. But on the other hand, it's like, we're desperate, man. We're desperate. Our lives depend on this. No, the sun's going to rise whether you win or you lose. You still, after this game, will have 8 more to play. You stupid fuck. They had to have taught him how to count at Penn, don't you think?
In that case, we can expect Ronnie Harrison to get ejected a few more times this year.
If I was a player on that team, and so you end up losing, okay, the coach said it was over, so it's over. You can't coach frenetically like that. You can't be like, all my pencils are over here, and my little stick-em notes are over here. And then you go in front of the press and you just shit your pants. Fire! Fire in the theater!
Baker did a much better job navigating his press conference than Kevin Stefanski did. And that is concerning when you're the head coach of the team and your starting quarterback can navigate the questions better than you.
Well, it is for this reason, and I usually wait for the end of the show to tell you what I think, the Browns will lose. I have no doubt they will lose, and I have no doubt that the wheels will come off because panic has officially set in. To me, standing in front of the press and saying, we are desperate, we have to win, our lives depend on it, To say that is no different than Chris Palmer's runaway train. Hey, T-Tosh, how you doing, buddy?
Good, thanks.
You know, it's the same difference saying, we got a runaway train here. And it's like, yeah, you're the fucking conductor. You're the engineer. What is your deal? Why are you telling the press that we have a runaway train? That's your job to keep it on the track. So what's the point? I don't understand the point of Kevin Stefanski saying that, because he's the one who's supposed to keep them sound and rational and calm, not desperate.
And out of all times to say something like this, it's the week where we have the most chaos and just distractions that you have to come out and say that our lives depend on this. Let's make a locker room that's already up in arms about OBJ more up in arms, because they feel like if they lose this game, it's going to be the same old Browns.
Yeah, I guess the best way I could describe the Kevin Stefanski thing is by bringing in one of my favorite characters, Dr. Phil. Okay? I always loved Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil would say, I've been reading about this Kevin Stefanski, and I can see psychologically what is going on. Each week, he prepares a game plan that does not work. The more he does it, the more he stands in front of people and takes the blame. But he also piles the blame on the players who are following the game plan that he erroneously creates every week.
By the way,
it is he who is desperate, not his players.
Did you see AVP's press conference? They were asking him about the offense, and he flat out came out and said, hey, we need to pass downfield more. We need to use play action more openly. I don't know if he was necessarily criticizing Kevin Stefanski directly, but I mean, for him to come out and say that, I thought was a very big eye opener, as far as at least he's seeing it, because we've been talking about it for a while. But if they can see it within the organization, they got to change it. You can't come on these press conferences every week and say we need to change. Then you don't. If you see the problem, address the problem. You have the power to do that.
The impression I get is and just one thing, and then I'll get to you, T-Tosh. Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to start seeing that kind of Freddie Kitchens desperation. Desperation in Cleveland is like, double pitches and wide receivers throwing downfield, and I'll do the basic, but that's what we call, yeah. What do you think, T-Tosh?
Well, I just happened to watch a bunch of Baker highlights from college, and when they let him play free and run around and find the people, he was awesome. And I know he's only half the quarterback because he's injured, but man, you got to let him loose. Let him use his instincts. He's 4 years in. He knows how to win.
Yeah, the problem is all the receivers are being told in a nitpicky fashion, you got to run here, you got to go here, you got to do this, you got to do that, and there isn't that loose flow. The receivers never seem to come back to Baker, or they never seem to, when they see him rolling out, take off in an opposite direction into an open area so that he can see them. There just doesn't seem to be a general cooperation here. And
they're limited to like this 20, 30-yard box. You can't go outside of it.
Yeah. It's aggravating. The game itself, I don't even need to study the game itself. I know who Cincinnati is. I know that Jamar Chase has 786 yards of receptions, and he is prolific. I know that Joe Burrow is a really fine young quarterback. I know that Cincinnati's run defense can be not so good, but I also know that they've seen what teams have been doing, and they're going to put as many men in the box as they possibly can to shut down the run game, knowing that they can, or thinking that they can, cover press on the slower Cleveland wide receivers. The hope that the Browns have in this game, they have Donovan Peoples-Jones coming back. And I don't know if Rashard Higgins really feels like playing or not, because last week it sure didn't look like he really did. He seemed to be somewhere on Mars.
And he was a part of people saying he threw Baker under the bus as well, because I don't know if you saw it, but he ended up liking,
Yes.
I believe it was it Senior's post or something?
Yes.
It was something in
Yes.
connection, and then he unliked it after
That's
people
right.
criticized him.
Again, you don't have the courage to actually come out and say what you think. And this is a problem. And, you know, if Demetric Felton can run patterns down the field, let's try to isolate him on linebackers. Let's see what we can do to have different wrinkles in this offensive scheme. The problem up to this point is that the coach seems to believe that these plays will work every time if every player is really in sync with the others and doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing at the right instant. And I guess that press coverage is throwing them off because either the receivers aren't getting to the spots that they're supposed to be getting to, or I don't know. But Cincinnati's going to try it. They're going to try to go press. Go ahead, T-Tush.
I think it's because he's also expecting the defense to be where he thinks it's going to be, and that's not the game. And going back to the college things, you'd see Mark Andrews and some of those guys just break free and look at Baker and become available, not being stuck in this cement drill, So he can't think that way.
And to your point about Felton, Moo, I think now that Landry is officially cemented as the number one, which he always was, by the way. Now, hopefully, they open up and use Felton more out of the slot, because Landry was in that slot receiver role. And yes, he's good at that. But now I think you're put in a position to where you got to expand a little bit more. Maybe they need to get Landry more on the outside over the middle.
Whoa.
Get Felton involved. I completely agree, though.
Yeah, I mean, if ownership becomes dissatisfied with Stefanski, then Haslam will rear his ugly head again, and that's the last thing that would be it for me. I mean, we were doing so well without him in the equation. If he enters the equation, I will just cease. I will stop. I don't want some trucking guy, with his biases and bigotries and stupidity, who got all fired up because little Johnny Manziel told him he was going to wreck the league. I mean, you don't need his instincts. He has the same football instincts that Richard Nixon had. If you remember the play that he sent into the Super Bowl, the end around that lost 12 yards. I mean, I could have sworn that play was going to work. And it's like, no, you're Richard Nixon. You know nothing about football. Yeah, it's this is going to be a hard game to digest, because the defense will give up points against Cincinnati.
That's my only concern. I'm really not concerned at all about the offense. I think the offense is probably going to have one of their best games this year. I just think this defense, we talk about the lack of communication. Man, Joe Burrow is one who, have that second of communication not be there, he will beat you with it.
Well, their tight end. Who is the tight end? 87.
Is it Uzma or Usman? Something, yeah.
Uzama or something like that.
Uzama. Yeah, something like
There's
that.
There's a guy who, going across the field, is doing major damage to people. And it isn't just Jamar Chase. There are other people that he can, use as weapons. And the fact that Joe Mixon is healthy and will give a sledgehammer approach to a running game that can wear the Browns down. But again, our secondary is, and right now, Burrow is where Baker was last year. And, people were willing to forgive him losing to the Jets. All right. If he turns around and loses to the Browns, who are in total disarray and panic, then you're going to see a worm turn there too, because it's like, boy, if you can't beat these guys. And likewise, if the Browns just get hammered, then the press gets what they really want, and they've scrap heaped the organization. And then
Is this in Cincinnati or is this in Cleveland Sunday?
Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, this is a road game.
Yeah, I mean, this is, the whole Pittsburgh loss was the worst thing that could have happened, because it not only highlighted what the Browns were unable to do, it also highlighted what they were unwilling to do, what the coach was unwilling to do. And that when it came down to a scuffle with a bully, he backed down from the bully. That's the sad part of the Pittsburgh game. And teams will know that, A, they can stop the Browns' running game if they stack the line. They will also know that they will score points off of, they also know that Baker's shoulders hurt, and any pressure they can get on him is certainly going to go a long way to perhaps put Case Keenum in the game. And then it wouldn't matter if there was any downfield passing plays or not, the ball wouldn't get there. There are so many things that the Browns are working against. They almost have to come up with something somewhat imaginative, or they have to find a way to attack the Cincinnati Bengals defensive front and, and make plays given an opportunity when they're in press coverage, which just hasn't happened all year. I don't know why. I mean, it seems like Njoku, was terrible in his initial period with the Browns, who was really an effective red zone receiver just because of his size and his height. They never throw the ball to him. There's no more fades in the red zone to him to let him go up and go after the ball. And now that he actually seems to be catching the ball fairly regularly, they don't throw to him. If somebody really had to complain, it wouldn't be OBJ. I think it would be Njoku, because he's got to be a mismatch for whoever it is who's covering him. He has to be from a speed and size perspective.
Yeah.
And he's been outplaying Hooper consistently.
Except that David's already had his huge game for the season. He already had his 179-yard receiving game, where Beckham hasn't. He's never had that.
So, you go to clevelandbrowns.com. It's so funny. The headlines are just like, Browns focused on preparation, entering a pivotal point in the season. Browns D will have to be at our best to slow down Joe Burrow. And John Johnson III confident he'll be ready for the Bengals. I don't want to hear from John Johnson III. I mean, where in the hell has he been all year? He's on the Sendejo cruise.
Yeah.
Fuck. So with that, let's pick the game. We get to we'll start with Don Cricky.
The Battle of Ohio.
The Battle of Ohio. Yeah, it's like, my God, we're back. If that was just the thing that I wanted to die. I mean, whenever they come back from commercial, he'd say, "We're back," and it's like, yes, that's why we're hearing you. You're back. Now shut up and call the game. What do you think, Bronk?
I think it's going to be 24-23. I have a coin here. Heads is the Browns. Tails is the Bengals. Let's see what's going to happen. Well, I caught it. And it's tails. The Bengals win 24-23.
And there you have it, scientifically derived. Titosh, tell me, what do you see, Oswami?
Well, I think is Ogunjobi still playing for the Bengals?
Yes.
Former Brown?
Yeah, he is. He's having a good year.
Well, let him stack the middle. Let's run around the side. Let's get lucky. Why not? I don't know. They've lost every game real close this year, so I'm gonna be optimistic for all you downers in Cleveland and say, why not? Let's go. Let's go 24-17 Browns.
Right. The Browns hold Cincinnati to 17 points. They will win.
Yeah.
But the thing
Why
is,
not?
Cincinnati consistently last year was scoring 30 points against Joe Wood's defense. It's going to be a problem.
Didn't he go with
Disgruntled-
OBJ?
What?
Didn't they ship him out with OBJ? It was a 2-for-1. Joe Woods and OBJ.
No,
Did I get it wrong?
God, I mean, this week's made me pine for Jabril Peppers to be back on the team. Jesus.
And I was going to ask Brian, and here's what this disgruntled one says.
Whoa.
Tell me,
he
Brian,
said
why?
Mayfield was going to be in the hospital last week, so there you go. He was actually going to die in the field. So that's Brian. That might happen this week.
Brian, you have nothing more to say than just that.
So he's
Yeah,
winding up here.
I just the only dirigible that's more deflated than the Cleveland Browns right now is the Las Vegas Raiders.
Oof.
So, this is just gonna suck the life right out of the fucking team. This entire debacle. So, plan on a few more losses in a row, gang.
You know what was amazing was John Gruden's comment. Did you see his comment about Henry Ruggs III?
No, that's two people that need to be together.
No, but all the misogyny and all the stuff and that Gruden was accused of, and his quote was, "They wanted an explosive receiver, and I gave them one."
Oh my
That sounds
God.
like something I would say on movie.
No, actually, that's just something I said. Thank you very much.
That's something I would say. That's like me saying Ron Rivera was a cancer in the Washington dressing room.
Did I say that? I didn't say
said
that.
I said that.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're taking credit for that quote. Tom saying the Browns 30-24. Derek,
if you bet on games, stay away from the Browns-Bengals game because A, we don't know how the Browns are going to react, and B, we don't know what the referees are going to do in this game.
Yeah, well,
suddenly
that's a whole different
Cincinnati's the flavor of the month, and are they going to get all the calls, or are we going to get all the calls because they feel sorry for us? I don't know what's going to happen in this game. Stay away.
They
from
never fucking call a game. It's either even or it's in the opposition's favor.
Well,
So,
I mean, we've had.
I
some
don't think that
calls
they're going to
this year
call an
so
even
far.
game.
Yeah.
I really don't. So you're going to get some roughing the passers against Joe Burrow. You're going to get some other some PI.
Yeah, well, maybe,
and they're
I
going to
don't know.
be just march the fucking field. So,
all right, Derek, what's your pick?
I got the Cincinnati Bengals, unfortunately. I'm going to say 31-28. I think it's going to be fairly close. I think the Browns offense will look good, as I said earlier. I think the defense, as we talked about, is going to give up a few. And I think it's just going to be a battle of, the shootout game. And I think the Bengals are going to come up top. So.
And as for me, 31-17 Bengals. I don't think that this is really going to be anything that I want to watch, and I'm not going to want to really talk much about it after it happens. But, look, the reason that we're human is that we can all be wrong.
Right.
And, you just don't know how a game is going to take place. I mean, if you would have said to me last year, the Browns had trouble beating Mason Rudolph, and even an old Ben Roethlisberger's coming back in the playoffs in Pittsburgh. If somebody was said to me, "Oh, by the way, the Browns are going to go up 28-0," I would just sit there and say, "How in the hell is that possible?" Just like New York Jets fans were absolutely drunk, I'm sure, when they beat the Bengals. Sometimes shit happens, but I think if you play this game 100 times, that 95 out of the 100 times the Bengals are going to win by 2 touchdowns right now, where this is where we're at, unfortunately. Yeah, Brunk.
Well, if it is a close game, like I'm predicting, I think Chase McLaughlin might end up getting the game ball. So he could be the difference. I mean, our special teams are better than the Bengals. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, There is one other thing I wanted to talk about that really, I guess maybe if nobody wants to challenge some people, and I think Baker Mayfield's the kind of guy who, if you introduced me to Baker Mayfield and we were in a room talking, I would imagine that I would not agree with very much that he says about the world. Okay? That is my personal impression. I don't give a shit about that because I'm a fan of a team and I want the team to win and I want him to do well. When a quarterback gets a name and becomes a known commodity, a guy like Aaron Rodgers, he's, future Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who is a human piece of shit. And you know what I knew he was? I knew he was when he beat the Bears in Chicago, and when he, in a close game, he starts screaming, "I own you, I've always owned you." And I thought to myself, there's a guy with a fucking problem in his head. I mean, how many people have the Bears been bitches for besides the Steelers in recent years? I don't remember the Bears, I remember the Bears drafting quarterback after quarterback like the Browns and just not coming up with nothing. So that really made me think, this guy's an asshole, man. This guy can't win gracefully, this future Hall of Famer. Why does he have to do that in a foreign stadium? Why does he have to do that to agitate the fans? What's the point? Now, of course, the worms turned on old Aaron, and he lied, all right? Any way that you look at it, he's not immunized from the COVID virus. He's a fucking liar. What he did probably is he took ivermectin. He's a fucking liar. He did not receive a vaccine, and he went ahead and broke the protocol. He deserves, under that protocol, to miss an extended period of time.
I wonder if ivermectin really does work for like genital warts or something.
But you see, people having fake vaccination cards and Aaron Rodgers not wanting to acknowledge that he's unvaccinated because he is an anti-vaxxer, because he is a far-right Republican. All these things are factual. Now, I think that he has the right to say what he is, and I wouldn't judge him one way or the other. But again, it's a character issue. There were videos of him being out and about in public and just breaking protocol during the football season where he wasn't supposed to be doing it. If it was another player, that other player would be treated completely differently. And they're trying, and their head coach, Matt LaFleur, is trying desperately to play into the lie rather than to, and the more they talk, the crazier they sound. Because it's like, no, you knew the difference between vaccination and immunized. You know the difference. I mean, this guy was a guest host on Jeopardy, for God's sakes. He has to know the difference.
His life's in jeopardy. Perfect.
Well, and others, and again, whether you agree with vaccination, you don't agree with vaccination, whether you agree with what's happening with this virus and not, two things I will tell you. One, you lie about something and it makes you a bad person, and it's not somebody I would cheer for. And two, if you were to say, what was OBJ? And I'll finish the program out this way. OBJ was a virus. He was a virus for the Cleveland Browns. And the reason he was a virus is because, just like COVID doesn't just have to jump into somebody's body. It finds weaknesses in somebody's body. God forbid if you have heart problems, then you're going to have a clotting issue. If you have respiratory lung problems, then you're going to have respiratory distress, and you can possibly die from that. The virus takes advantage of the weakness of its host. That's exactly what Odell Beckham Jr. did. He waited until the body was the weakest that it's been all year to lay shit on him and make it worse and to try to stamp him out.
Hey, did you see the quote, or I guess not quote, but the clip today? It was one of the I don't know if it was necessarily mic'd up, but like a Building the Browns type clip. It was OBJ talking to Nick Chubb, and he goes, "I want a touchdown," and Nick Chubb answers back without hesitation, "I want to win." That tells you the difference between the types of guys on this team. OBJ is selfish. Nick Chubb is a team guy, team first. We need to build this team around guys like Nick Chubb because that is where the success is going to come. Not Odell
Especially
Beckham
with a
Jr.
coach like this. I mean, you have to understand, just like Kareem Hunt has to understand. I mean, Nick Chubb could have a shorter career, but a hell of a lot more yardage. And if he wants the glory of the yardage, if he wants to be one of the great, higher level 10,000 yard career rushers, he's averaging over he's averaged 5 yards plus per carry every year he's played. And that's a great number. But he's got Kareem Hunt on the team with him, and those two guys are cheering each other on.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them are getting the carries that they got, not when Kareem was playing with the Chiefs. They've agreed to being selfless, and it's kept them stronger and kept their legs churning and getting that extra yardage. OBJ was nothing more than a virus. He was waiting for the weak moment to pounce on the organization. He told the organization he wanted to be traded in the preseason while he was pretending to do his Rocky Gonna Fly Now training segment. He already knew he wanted to leave Cleveland. He was just waiting for the most opportune moment to hurt the franchise.
And
That's
while
it.
he was in the offseason, if you'll remember Camp Mayfield with all of those guys, Beckham, Landry, Njoku, DPJ, down training to try to get this thing right. And meanwhile, we come to find out he wanted out before then. So, I mean, it's all an act with him.
Yep. So everybody, I hope I'm wrong. We're going to find out. I'll be back with you on Sunday. Hey, because I don't, if I'm wrong, I'll come out here and say, God, I was totally wrong about this. I like stand-up people. I like to think I'm a stand-up person. And I hope the Browns do well. I really do. I hope they do well. But somehow it just makes me feel like it's going to be difficult.
It's the Battle of Ohio.
Yeah, 1 o'clock on Sunday. I'll be back at a halftime show somewhere around 2:30 in the afternoon, and I think we'll have a damn good idea how the game's going because the team will come out a certain way, one way or the other. I don't think there's gray. I think there's black and white in this situation, and if they come out really storming and ready to play, that's one thing. But if they come out and are deflated early because Burrow gets an early touchdown and they just deflate, we'll see that too. And then I'll be with you again after the game to hold your hand somewhere a little after 4 o'clock. I'm a hoof holder. So everybody, thanks.
The white marshmallow of hope, then. You need to hold up the white marshmallow.
Hey, speaking of, you didn't see...
further and further away.
Moo, you didn't
see on the replay, Key.
You didn't see behind you, Moo, but there was a point in the show where Topaz sat there and was just staring at that big white marshmallow of hope behind you.
I think he wants to eat it. He wants a white marshmallow.
God, no, he's got to get something healthier than that.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Oh, is that Mr. Celery? He lost his bottom.
No. That was my keyboard.
Oh, well, no problem. You can always get another one from Amazon.
Hey guys, is there no Monday night football for them?
Look at this thing.
Oh,
wow, Logitech from like 2012.
Yeah, this thing is small. I like it.
Topaz thinks you dropped food. Look at him.
Yeah, I know he's scavenger dog.
Or something. He's all over the place.
Bronk and T-Tosh, Brian and Derek, I always appreciate your participation in the program, and I'll see y'all on Sunday. We'll see what happens. Meanwhile, my dog is snouting me, which means he wants me to get off the air. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back again Sunday for you at halftime. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads.
Go Brown.
Good night. Stop snouting me.